Hey, it's Ubu, and today we're talking about Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 just turned 10 years old, and with my recent playthrough, I figured it'd be a good time to talk about why I love Dark Souls 3 so much. So in today's video, I wanted to share what I enjoy most about Dark Souls 3, and even touch on a few of its shortcomings. Even with my limited experience, the Dark Souls series has always captivated me with its story, world building, characters, and of course its challenging combat, which gives a uniquely satisfying feeling. Also, I've seen a lot of people playing Dark Souls 3 for the first time lately, which I think is awesome. If you're still on the fence and haven't played it for yourself, maybe today's video will convince you, but either way, I appreciate you being here. So I found myself on a bit of a Dark Souls-like binge lately, starting with a return to Dark Souls 3 and its DLCs, which I experienced for the first time. I first beat Dark Souls 3 almost 8 years ago, and I'm so glad I decided to play it again. My experience with Dark Souls 3 left me wanting more, so I even picked up Lives of P in the meantime, finished my first playthrough of the base game, which was a lot of fun, but my thoughts on Lives of P will have to wait for another video. If you're curious about my experience with Dark Souls and Souls-like games, I've beaten the first game one time. I've never beaten Dark Souls 2, I remember playing it many years ago and hating it, but I'd like to revisit it one day soon and give it a fair shot. With Dark Souls 3, I played my first playthrough about 8 years ago. I recently finished my second playthrough, plus the DLCs, and I'm currently on New Game Plus. I've beaten Elden Ring one time through the base game on the Xbox One, and I've been trying to get through another playthrough on PC, but the performance is really undesirable. And I've beaten Lies of P with one playthrough, currently on New Game Plus, and have Sekiro on my list to play soon. I've never played Sekiro, so I'm excited to jump into that as soon as possible. Anyways, with all that out of the way, I'm going to give a general spoiler warning, just in case you haven't played Dark Souls 3, but I will be avoiding hard spoilers as in in-game specifics and whatnot. At least I'll do my best. If you want zero spoilers or zero information on this game and want to go in fresh, then I recommend you don't watch this video. Also, I have a bit of background footage playing. I made a new character. I wanted to try a pyromancer run, but I was not doing very well. You can call it performance anxiety. We're trying to get some B-roll going for this video, but just bear with me in that regard. So I hope you enjoy that as it plays in the back. And my recent playthrough of Dark Souls 3 plus the DLC, all bosses, exploring every bit of the game. It took me roughly 38-ish hours. I didn't rush myself, and there were a few moments where I either was struggling a bit or spent some time farming souls. So now let's get into why I think everyone should play Dark Souls 3. I've broken down my overview into some key aspects and what I usually do in my other videos, just to keep me on track, so I'm going to start with what I love about the visuals. While Dark Souls 3's linearity is a bit more noticeable compared to previous titles, the level design is quite expansive with its convincing and very detailed settings. There are many unique areas, from mountaintop castles, undead catacombs, claustrophobic prisons, and even demon ruins far below the surface. All of these locations are fun to explore as you traditionally would, while fighting your way through enemies, looting treasure, looking for secrets, unlocking shortcuts, and of course fighting bosses. And speaking of bosses, Dark Souls 3 is known for having some of the best bosses in the series, which is no exaggeration in my opinion. While there are a couple that aren't all that impressive, with a curse-rotted Greatwood for example, the overwhelming majority of them are impressive. Dark Souls 3, including its DLCs and optional bosses, has a total of 25 bosses. Basic enemy design has a lot of variations, with some familiar faces such as dogs and even some returning figures from previous titles, which I won't mention in case you haven't played it for yourself. Overall, I'd say the enemy design in Dark Souls 3 is very memorable, especially with its boss design. Now let's talk about the audio. The sound design is immersive, from hearing the weight of your footsteps, the hellish screams of enemies, the destructive power of spells, to even its haunting yet beautiful music. As usual, boss OSTs are unique, epic, and they add so much to the experience. I would even say the music is like its own character. It's just that good. The sound design of Dark Souls 3 definitely reflects previous installments, with sounds such as the "You Died" screen, discovering a new location, and lighting a bonfire, which gives a comforting and nostalgic sense of familiarity. Moreover, the voice acting is top-notch. NPCs speaking to you have a somber, steady cadence, which conveys the heaviness of the world around us. I really appreciate the serious tone of this game, and the small detail of their voices echoing throughout the Firelink Shrine is a nice touch as well. Overall, the sound design in Dark Souls 3 is executed to a high degree and wonderful to listen to. Now, on to the mechanics. Dark Souls 3 is pretty straightforward. Its controls are pretty much as they've always been in previous titles. Right button for light attack, right trigger for heavy attack and charge attacks, B to roll, etc. However, Dark Souls 3 sees the introduction of a mana bar, aka FP, which is used for spells and even weapon arts. If you played Elden Ring, you'll already be familiar with this. What makes FP so great is that in Dark Souls 1 and 2, you didn't have mana. Spells such as sorceries, pyromancies, and miracles had charges to them, which you had to restore at a bonfire. Moreover, the addition of mana in Dark Souls 3 allows you to experiment with more spells, which I think is great. Also, a lot of the weapon arts in Dark Souls 3 are super awesome too. The combat is challenging but fair. Bosses in the base game aren't so bad except for a few. I'd say it's more difficult bosses are in the DLC, such as Midir and Sister Frida. During my recent playthrough, the boss I struggled the most with was Sister Frida. I heard tales of her difficulty over the years, and since I was new to the DLC, it took me several tries to beat her, but it was an awesome fight nonetheless. Now, one of my biggest nitpicks with Dark Souls 3 is its lock-on having a super short range, especially compared to Elden Ring, and there are moments where it just doesn't cooperate like I want it to. While I did get used to it eventually, it definitely wore my patience thin early on. Another big issue in terms of its mechanics, and a lot of people can attest to this, is the covenants. Now, the issue with covenants primarily revolves around wanting to 100% the game. There are a handful of achievements that require you to collect all of the spells, rings, and gestures throughout the game. To do this, you must raise your reputation with these covenants to either level 1 or 2, which requires turning in each of their respective items, such as sunlight medallions. Some of these covenants require online play, with either PvP or being summoned to help vanquish bosses or invaders. The workaround for this is farming the items from specific enemies throughout the world. However, even with boosting your item discovery, farming these items can take you hours upon hours. Best case scenario is having a friend drop these items for you, but it can be very time consuming otherwise. It's not impossible, it's just an unpleasant grind that makes the prospect of 100%ing the game more of a chore than it should be, especially since getting all of the rings requires New Game Plus Plus. With that out of the way, I would say overall, the mechanics in Dark Souls 3 are very enjoyable, and it's fun to learn how weapons and spells work together. Now onto the story. In the nutshell, the story of Dark Souls 3 is very akin to Dark Souls 1 and 2. In Dark Souls 3, you are the Ashen One, who must slay 4 of the 5 Lords of Cinder, the Abyss Watchers, Aldrich, Devourer of Gods, Lothric, and Yorm the Giant. The 5th Lord of Cinder, Ludlith, is in the Firelink Shrine, who is also the boss soul vendor. Each of them tried and failed in linking the flame, but combining their remains together will be enough to finally succeed. Once you complete this task, you will then be able to use them to rekindle the first flame, after defeating the final boss, of course. There are 4 distinct endings to link the first flame as your standard ending: the End of Fire, the Usurpation of Fire, which is a secret ending, and the End of Fire, which is also a secret ending. That will be all I'll cover regarding the story, as to not spoil everything, but throughout your journey you will come across several NPCs, or Unkindled I believe they're called, that give more context to the world around you and give insight on their own personal involvement. As usual, there's a lot of intrigue and world building that you either learn through dialogue or item descriptions too. I personally really enjoy the obscure storytelling done in the Dark Souls games, even Elden Ring. While it may seem very surface level or even abstract, I appreciate the opportunity to use my imagination, rather than having everything being spelled out for me. This approach to storytelling works very well in this franchise specifically, which enforces the ominous dread that surrounds you and the other characters. In closing, Dark Souls 3 has stood the test of time. Its strong foundation was built from including and experimenting with the design philosophy of previous titles, forging Dark Souls 3 into a finely crafted and memorable experience. That's why I believe everyone should play Dark Souls 3. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Do you agree or disagree with me? Do you have anything to add? Do you just want to say hi? Let me know what's up. And if you'd like to support my channel, hit subscribe, leave a like, comment, and share the video. I'd really appreciate that. Also have links to my socials in the description if that interests you. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I think that's all I have to say about it. So thanks for hanging out with me, but don't forget,